Ram, Ram. Krishna, Krishna. Okay, we are live on Facebook. And go back to, there we go. 1 second. Good to see everybody again. Give me 1 second and we'll be ready to go. And turn on my camera. Here I am, fans. So, all right, let me just make sure this sound is working all right. Test. Hare Krishna. Okay, everything's good. Okay, so welcome to our evening Bhagavad Gita study. And first we're going to chant Jai Radhamadava. That's all right. And then after that, we are going to continue with the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so let us go. Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Bharadhauti Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Bharadhauti Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Giri Bharadhauti Gopi Janavalabha Giri Bharadhauti Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Ranhu Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jaya Ranhu Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace via Chalanad Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Vijay ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Vijay Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Vijay Namacharya Srila Hoyadas Thakur Vijay Rem Se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Vijay Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopinath Shaimakund Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuram Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Gaur. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vasaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pujani Nirvashesha Sunyavadi Paschachate. So Megana Timidanda Shagananjana Shlakya Chakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shigave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my divine spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada is who kindly opened my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, welcome again to the evening Bhagavad Gita study. And it's also the Sunday feast time here in New Goloka. So we'll have some of the people attending the Sunday feast, of course. It's a Sunday feast, not for the mouth, but for the ears. That's Bhagavad Gita. So sorry about that, and maybe we can give you some virtual prasadam afterwards. That's all right. Okay. So continuing with the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and now we are in text 43. We may finish this chapter today, the universal form. Just hold on one second. Alrighty. So pitasya lokasya characharasya tvamasya pujasya gurur gariyan tatmatsamosya vyadika kutosno lokatrayapya lokape lokatre yapratitama prabhava. Pita, the Father, see you are lokasya of all the world, chara, moving, acharasya, non-moving. Tvam, you are asya of this pujaha, worshipable, cha, also guru, master, vidyan, glorious, na, never, what, samaha, equal to you, asti, there is, abhyadikaha, greater, kutaha, how is it possible, anya, other, lokatraye, in the three planetary systems, api, also, apratima prabhava, immeasurable power. Translation, you are the Father of this complete cosmic manifestation of the moving and the non-moving. You are its worshipable chief, the supreme spiritual master. No one is greater than you, nor can anyone be one with you. How then could there be anyone greater than you within the three worlds, O Lord of immeasurable power? So, pretty self-explanatory. So purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is worshipable as a father is worshipable for his son. He is the spiritual master because he originally gave the Vedic instructions to Brahma, and presently he is also instructing Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Therefore, he is the original spiritual master, and any bona fide spiritual master at the present moment must be a descendant in the line of disciplic succession stemming from Krishna. Without being a representative of Krishna, one cannot become a teacher or spiritual master of transcendental subject matter. So just one point, Krishna here is referred to as the Father. And that it's a fact, ontologically, Krishna is the Father of everybody. As he says, Aham Bija Prada Pitaha. I am the Pita, the Father of everyone. However, if we simply think of Krishna like that, then we will be always thinking of taking service from him. Just like many years ago, I had a father, physical father. He passed away. And basically, my relationship was always, Dad, can you get me this? Dad, can you get me that? When I wanted a car, of course, he had some money, so he was not all the money like Krishna. Krishna has all the money, supremely rich, supremely powerful. So when I wanted a sports car, I said, Dad, can you get me a sports car? And it was an MG. And the next morning or several days later, I woke up and there under the tree, not under the tree, but outside of the driveway, there was a sports car. And then, someone's sending me a chat. Don't send a chat unless it's extremely necessary. Oh, he said this, the quality of the audio. Hold on a second. I think I have it too high. Okay, should be better now. Should be better. I'm sure, let me make sure I have the right microphone here. Yeah, the right microphone. Okay. Should be all right. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yeah. Okay. All right. I had to adjust the volume on the microphone. All right. So anyway, getting back to the story. So when I asked my father a sports car, he got me a sports car. And then when I asked my father to send me to college, he sent me to college. When I asked my father for an apartment in college, he got me an apartment in college. When I asked my father. So that was my relationship with my father. Of course, that's not 100% the relationship. Let me just check the audio quality just because I have a way to check it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Sounds all right. Okay, sounds fine. Okay, so anyway, so that was the relationship with the father. Of course, it wasn't 100% my relationship. I wasn't a complete, have a complete pecuniary relationship with my father, financial relationship. But it was one of my taking service. Whereas, that's better than nothing as far as the relationship with God. Our Father who art in heaven, give us this day our daily bread, etc. So Prabhupada actually compared to the devotee asking bread from God to be putting God in the position of a baker. Or Prabhupada also said, it's like sitting down at the dinner table with your father and saying, Dad, will you feed me today? Let's see, another chat. All right. So anyway, I guess it was just Arjuna who has bad quality. So anyway, too bad, Arjuna. Your equipment that you're so proud of is not really up to snuff. So anyway, so getting back to the point. Sorry. So the relationship was one of taking service. So most people have that relationship with God of taking service from him. Rather than thinking of what's good for him, we're thinking, or what's pleasing to him, we're thinking of what's pleasing to me. And we were talking the other day with a dear disciple of mine about what most people think the spiritual world is like. And my answer was, what do most people think the spiritual world is like? And I'm not going to refer to a specific religion. They think it's like Hawaii on steroids. Now, if you don't understand that expression, on steroids, that means basically to an extreme degree. That Hawaii, Prabhupada said, if there's any nice place in this material world, it is Hawaii. And most people think, or most so-called religions think, that when you go back to the spiritual world, you get, your puppy dog and your little kitten, and you get your grandpa and grandma, and who else do you get? You probably get your uncle and your aunt and everybody else, and it's just like a big family reunion, and you're all just like gluttonous there in the spiritual world. I mean, that's the conception of heaven or the spiritual world. And God is sort of like an afterthought. He's the one who's in charge. He's like president of the spiritual world. But just like in America, you don't really bring the president into your personal life that much. He's meant, or the government is meant, to provide amenities for you and protect you in different ways. So that's God. So our conception in the Krishna conscious society is different. We like to see God as our son instead of us being God's son, because ontologically, yes, we are God's children. Everyone is a child of God. And actually, Prabhupada sometimes would talk about this statement, Daridra Narayan, which is actually very popular amongst certain politicians in India. That means we should see God in the poor people. And then Prabhupada would respond, Dhani Narayan, we should see God in the rich people too. So, and see God in the animals, not just in the people. So anyway, so we should be thinking of pleasing God. In other words, as one great politician in America said, ask not what God can do for you, or what you ask for what you can do for God. Don't ask for what God can do for you, ask for what you can do to God, or for God, not to God. So that's a devotee's conception. So in the spiritual world, when we take our spiritual forms and we realize our spiritual forms, we become the mother, father of God, or the buddy of God, the friend of God, or the servant of God, or the conjugal lover of God. But the interesting thing is, in the spiritual world, we don't refer to him as God. It's not that the residents of Vrindavan are saying, I want to hear God play his flute today. That's kind of interesting. They don't think of Krishna as God. They just love him and they just want to serve him. And they're so ready to serve him if Krishna crushes them by his embrace, leaves them brokenhearted by not being present before him, and does anything. He's completely free to do anything, and he's always their worshipful personality. That's the mood of the gopis. The mood of the gopis is if it gives Krishna pleasure to make them miserable, then their misery is their pleasure. So that's the opposite of God the Father. Although, yes, technically, ontologically, God is the Father, but I wanted to clear that up. I mean, I'd be honest, I don't think of Krishna as my father. I think of Krishna as, anyway, that's for you to find out. Anyway, I don't think of him as my father. I mean, I just imagine going on the altar or going before the deities. Krishna, Dad, can you get me a sports car? It really wouldn't be that appropriate. Or at least, sports car now. No, Tesla, Krishna. So I definitely don't like to make requests to Krishna, because why? Because I'm his servant. Now, sometimes we will make requests of Krishna when it involves his service, like give me the intelligence to do something. Please help this person become Krishna conscious. Please cure this devotee, if they're sick and we want them to get cured. But as far as myself, I don't pray, please. Obviously, I wouldn't pray, please give me a young body again, because then I'd probably die in a second, get a young body. Anyway, you don't pray for yourself. I mean, you can. It's better than nothing. Akama, sarvakama, mokshakama, davadi, tivrena bhakti yogeni, yajeta purusham param. As we heard the other day in class, it's such an interesting story. I said I would relate it in my class in the evening. One of our devotees here, he was reading the story of Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni performed so many austerities. Really interesting story. I think everyone should hear. He's probably listened to it. Anyway, I know his wife is. So Kardama Muni performed so many austerities, and finally Vishnu came. And he asked Vishnu for a wife. And so, oh my God. But it was for service, not for his sense gratification. Okay. And, generally in India, people are worshiping the goddess Katyayani. And that's why you have this Katyayani Vrat. If someone does Katyayani Vrat for a husband, the husband appears magically after the Katyayani Vrat is over. The gopis did it, and they got Krishna as their husband. So this one devotee, he heard this and he got very inspired. And then he prayed to Krishna. And Krishna appeared before. No, I'm adding to the story a little bit. It's not Krishna appeared with 4 arms. He said, my dear devotee, what you want? He said, I want a perfect wife who can help me in my devotional service. So he got a perfect wife, very good devotee. So the point I'm making is that whether one is free of material desires, full of material desires, or desirous of liberation, one should approach Krishna for the fulfillment of those desires. That doesn't mean that one just lays around and does nothing, but one depends on Krishna, one approaches Krishna. And a pure devotee will never ask for anything personal. He may ask for empowerment to spread Krishna consciousness, but he will never make a request for his personal sense gratification. My dear Krishna, it's been so long since I ate a mango. Will you please produce a mango for me, or something like that? But for something that related to service, so it's completely appropriate for this devotee to pray for Krishna to send a pure devotee wife. Anyway. And the devotee got it. It's interesting. Anyway, you can pray for all sorts of different things. Generally, we're advising people to pray Mama Janmani Janmani Shre Bhavatad Bhakti Haitaki Twaye. Okay. All right. So let's see. Did we skip ahead here? Whoops, we skipped ahead here, Anyway, I don't know how that happened. All right, let's go down a little bit. The Lord is being paid obeisances in all respects. He is of immeasurable greatness. No one can be greater than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, because no one is equal to or higher than Krishna within any manifestation of spiritual material. Everyone is below him. No one can excel him. This is stated in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6:8. Natashakaryam karanam cha vidite datat shamas javyadikash cha drishyate. The Supreme Lord Krishna has senses and a body like an ordinary man, but for him, his senses, let me just clarify this. He has senses and a body that are similar to those of an ordinary man. In other words, an ordinary man has senses and body. Krishna has senses and body, but Krishna's senses and body are transcendental. Okay? Don't want you to take this out of context. But for him, there's no difference between his senses, his body, his mind, and himself. For us, there's the duality. There's the difference. We are not our senses. We're not our body. We are not a material mind. We are ourselves. But in the spiritual world, there is no difference. Our senses are non-different than us. Our body is us. It's not that we take a body in the spiritual world. Our spiritual body is there. It's just we haven't realized it. It's inert. We are our spiritual body. There's no duality. We are our mind, and we are ourselves. That's a tautology. Foolish persons who do not perfectly know him say that Krishna is different from his soul, mind, heart, and everything else. That's a bunch of CRAP for people to say that Krishna is different from his soul, mind, heart, and everything else. Krishna never takes a body. There's so many verses. Jopi-san avyatman utanami shropi-san praptim swamadishtaya samavami atmamaya. When Krishna comes, he comes down in his same self, body, person, etc. Also, avajananti mamudha. Krishna says, those who think that I take a material body, there are asses, Krishna says. Krishna is absolute, therefore his activities and potencies are supreme. It is also stated that although he does not have senses like ours, it's interesting, previously Prabhupada said, has a body and senses like that. Look at this. Lord Krishna has senses and body like an ordinary man. In other words, not the same, but just like an ordinary man has senses and bodies, Krishna has senses and bodies, but his senses and body and mind are the same as himself. Okay, so we have to clarify that. Don't want you to misunderstand things taken out of context. He does not have senses at all, like ours. He can perform all sensory activities. Therefore, his senses are neither imperfect nor limited. No one can be greater than him. No one can be equal to him. And everyone is lower than him. So what Prabhupada is referring to here is a verse from the Brahma Samhita. Angani asha shakaledriya dri timanti. That means Krishna has senses because they're not limited. His senses can do anything that any of the other senses can do. Krishna can see with his tongue. He can see with his ears. He can smell with his ears. He can touch with his eyes. I mean, because it's a spiritual body. It's completely spiritual. There's an interesting story about Narada Muni's spiritual body. Even Narada Muni has a spiritual body like Krishna does, but not unlimited like Krishna. So once upon a time, there was this big Rakshasa, Ravan. And Ravan got very angry at Narada Muni. And he took out this big sword or blade he had called the Chandrahas. And he got so angry at Narada Muni, he said, I'm going to chop you to pieces. And he started to put his sword through Narada Muni. Went, boom, boom. The sword just went through and Narada Muni was just standing there. And he said to Narada Muni, what kind of spiritual body do you have? And Narada Muni said, it's a spiritual body. And you used to have one, you rascal, before you came down to the material world. And of course, that's the story of Jai and Vijay. So the knowledge, strength, and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are all transcendental, as stated in Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter, text 9. You're all familiar with this verse, one of the key verses in the Gita. Janma karma chame devyam evam yoviti tatvataha tatvateham punajanna naitimameti sojana. Whoever knows Krishna's transcendental body activities and perfection, after quitting his body, returns to him and does not come back to this miserable world. Therefore, one should know that Krishna's activities are different from others. The best policy is to follow the principles of Krishna. That will make one perfect. It is also stated that there is no one who is master of Krishna. Everyone is his servant. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, 5th chapter, text 142, confirms Ekala Ishvara Krishna Arasatva Brija. Only Krishna is God and everyone else is his servant. Everyone is complying with his order. There is no one who could deny his order. Everyone is acting according to his direction, being under his superintendence. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, he is the cause of all causes. Let me qualify this. That's the ontological statement, that everyone is acting under Krishna's order. Everyone, no one can order Krishna around. But let me qualify that. That's an ontological statement. That means that's according to who he is, his nature. However, Krishna can be ordered around by his devotee, especially Srimati Radharani. And even in Dwarka, Krishna has some of his wives who order him around. One wife, in that regard, is Satyabhama. What happened is that one time Krishna decided to get his first wife, Rukmini, a parijata flower. And so, you know what happens when you give one wife something and the other wives don't get it, especially when you got quite a bit of wives, 16,108. Of course, we just talked about Chitraketu, who apparently had 10 million. Of course, that was hyperbole. But so Krishna really had 16,108 because he can do it. It's nothing for Krishna. So he gives Rukmini this parijata flower. It's a flower from the heavenly planets. And Satyabhama, his wife, nags him and nags him and nags him. And finally, he just goes, okay, I'll get it for you. And he goes, after defeating this demon, Bhaumasura, he takes the whole parijata tree and he brings it back to this world, to Dwarkadam. And then he has to fight off all the demigods because of that. So Krishna sometimes, in many cases, not sometimes, but is always controlled by his devotees. But it's not an ontological point. It's not because of his lack of power. It's because of his love. So Krishna is controlled by love. Another example was mentioned this morning. Well, that wasn't this morning, it was the other day in class. It's a story of, you might remember the story. Oh, yeah. Anyway, the name of one of Lord Chaitanya's devotees. Jagadananda Pandit. Okay, Jagadananda Pandit. Okay, Jagadananda Pandit always wanted to serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he thought, I want to bring sandalwood oil to massage Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he went all the way, took a long trip, brought sandalwood oil back, a big, big keg of sandalwood oil to massage Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or to give the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu servants to massage him. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't want it. Why didn't he want it? Because as a sannyasi, to have perfumed oil, people would criticize him. It's described that a sannyasi is like a white sheet. You know, there's a little spot on it, you see it right away. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very concerned, not that he was interested so much in reputation, but he was interested in keeping a good reputation so his preaching would be accepted. That's why it's very important to have a good reputation. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to Jagadananda Pandit, the sandalwood oil that you have brought, you should offer to the Lord Jagannath. And Jagadananda Pandit had this mood, which is the same mood as Satyabhama, this mood of, we say left-handed mood. You know, he was angry sometimes with the person who he loved. And you see this in the world. Sometimes you could love someone very much and you get really angry with them. So he was so angry with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for refusing the sandalwood oil and telling him to offer the sandalwood oil to the deities. He took this jug of sandalwood oil and smashed it. He said, who told you I got sandalwood oil? And actually, he proved that he had sandalwood oil because he smashed it right in front of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So then, Jagadananda Pandit went into a deep depression. And for about 3 days, he didn't come out to eat or sleep, or always sleeping, of course, to eat or drink or do anything. And Lord Chaitanya got very worried. Remember, Lord Chaitanya is God. So he was actually controlled by the man, or the anger of his devotee. And so eventually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to do something to get Jagadananda Pandit out. So he knocked on the door and said, Jagadananda, please, can you cook for me? And Jagadananda, of course, took a bath, got ready, and he cooked for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to eat more than he wanted to eat. He's God. Because of the love and anger of his devotee. So when Prabhupada says everyone is acting in accordance with his direction, of course, that's ultimately there for the Lord's ras. But you see in these pastimes that the pure devotees sometimes do things that apparently aggravate the Lord, cause him some consternation, make him act in specific ways. But Krishna wants that. So it really is according to Krishna's direction, even though it apparently is not according to Krishna's direction, because Krishna enjoys a spicy relationship with his devotees. Just like Prabhupada, he liked to have a lot of spices in his prasadam. And when the devotees offered him food without spices, without salt, and not fried or anything like that, Prabhupada said, let the starvation committee go to hell. So it's important to have some spice in life, and Krishna likes a lot of spices in life. Anyway, so I just had to clarify this particular statement by Prabhupada by talking about a little ras theology. Text 44. Tasmat pranamya pranitaya kayam prasadaye tvam aham isham nijam Piteva putrasya sakeva sakyu priya priya yar hasideva sodum. Okay. Tasmat, therefore, pranamya, offering obeisances, pranidhaya, laying down, kayam, the body, prasadiye, to beg mercy, twam, unto you, aham, I, isham, unto the Supreme Lord, ityam, worshipable, pita iva, like a father, putrasya, with a son, saka iva, like a friend, sakyuhu, with a friend, priyaha, a lover, priyayaha, with the dearmost, adhasi, you should, deva, my Lord, so to tolerate. You are the Supreme Lord, to be worshipped by every living being. Thus I fall down to offer you my respectful obeisances and ask your mercy. As a father tolerates the impudence of his son, a friend, the impertinence of a friend, or a husband, the familiarity of his wife, please tolerate the wrongs I may have done you. So remember, in the previous verses, Arjuna was talking about, I used to lay down in the same bed with you, just call you, oh, my friend, and all this intimate relationships. And now I realize you're God. Oh my God, I have committed some maha aparads. So Arjuna is very worried at this point that he has done something really bad, not understanding Krishna's position. Of course, Krishna enjoyed all those intimate interactions, and he enjoys it a lot more than hearing the prayers that Arjuna is offering right now. Because Krishna enjoys it a lot more when his buddy slaps him on his back, when his buddy wrestles with him, when his buddy does all sorts of tricks, or when the gopis steal his flute, and when a devotee offers these unreverent prayers. But here Arjuna is definitely scared. I am in trouble, he's thinking. Krishna, you should forgive me. And he gives all these examples here, the father should always forgive the son. The friend should always forgive the friend. The husband should always forgive the wife. And the wife should also forgive the husband, unless the husband's a real bozo. Anyway, purport. Krishna's devotees relate to Krishna in various relationships. One might treat Krishna as a son, or one might treat Krishna as a husband, or as a friend, or as a master. Krishna and Arjuna are related in friendship. As the father tolerates, or the husband or a master tolerates, so Krishna tolerates. And in this particular case, Krishna didn't only tolerate, Krishna loved it when Arjuna related to him in that intimate way. It's not a question of just tolerating. Krishna's enjoying. In one sense, we don't really say Krishna is just tolerating, because whatever Krishna does, he's enjoying. He's the supreme enjoyer. Or whatever he chooses to do, just like if you analyze, we've spoken about this before, if you analyze Krishna's psychology, why does he do what he does? Just like sometimes I talk to the devotees and I try to understand why they have certain types of personalities, why they act in a certain way. And we go into their childhood like a Freudian psychologist does. And I say, how did your mother treat you? How did your father treat you? How did your friends treat you? Did you have any traumatic experiences? And so these particular instances that they experienced when they were young influence their psychology throughout their life. But with Krishna, he is that he is. It says in the Bible, I am that I am. So, and Krishna is who he is. So in other words, there's no explanation for Krishna's psychology or Krishna's actions other than he's doing it for enjoyment. Why'd you do that, Krishna? Enjoy it. So it's very easy. Psychologists would have a very good time with Krishna. Why'd you do that? Why do you think like that? I enjoy it. Not that I was traumatized when I was young because my mother tried to tie me to a grinding mortar and she ran after me with a stick. Just like I was recounting to the devotees today that when I was young, my mother would run after me with a stick. And it was traumatic, but she never caught me. Anyway, so Krishna's psychology is that fun. So whatever Krishna does is fun. It's not that he's just sitting around, I'm just going to tolerate this devotee. Oh my God, I have to tolerate this nonsense. It's like sometimes we have to grit our teeth. There's a famous story. I think it's a World War, not World War One, Revolutionary War in America that George Harrison got a bullet. Not George Harrison, George Washington. That's funny. George Washington got a bullet, and he just had to bite another bullet while they took out the bullet in his leg. There was some soldier who had that. Maybe not even George Washington. So sometimes we really have to tolerate things. I mean, sometimes I go to a kirtan and someone doesn't know how to play the instruments or sing, and they're not singing in tune, and I just stay there and tolerate. Oh my God. I'm sure you've all experienced that. You just sit there and tolerate and say, oh my God, I have to be here. It'll be a scene if I leave. But, ooh. But Krishna's not like that. Everything he does for his enjoyment, whether it's killing the demons, whether it's even taking the chastisement of his friends or chastises of his girlfriends. It's not just toleration, it's love and enjoyment. And we have to tolerate so many things. You go to work, you have to tolerate driving through traffic. You have to tolerate the words of your boss. You have to tolerate the chastisement for your wife or your husband. And there's so many things we just have to tolerate and grit our teeth, but Krishna's not like that. I just want to make that clear. So next verse. Adrishta purvam rishito svi drishtva vayena cha pravyatitam mano me Deva me darshya deva rupam prasida devesha jagan nivasa Adrishta purvam, never seen before, rishitaha, gladdened as me, I am. Drishtva, by seen, vayena, out of fear, cha, also. Pravyatitam, perturbed, manaha, mind, may, my, tat, that, eva, certainly, may, unto me, darshya, show, deva, O Lord, rupam, the form, prasida, just be gracious, deva, isha, O Lord of lords, jagat, nivasa, a refuge of the universe. After seeing this universal form, which I've never seen before, I'm gladdened, but at the same time, my mind is disturbed with fear. Therefore, please bestow your grace upon me and reveal again your form as the personality of Godhead, O Lord of Lords, O abode of the universe. So this is interesting. Not something new, but it's interesting because Arjuna is asking to see Krishna, not in his original form, but in his form, four-handed form, which indicates the God form. Not indicates, which is the God form. O abode of the universe. Purport, Arjuna is always in confidence with Krishna because he is a very dear friend, and as a dear friend is gladdened by his friend's opulence. My friend God. Arjuna is very joyful to see that his friend Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and could show such a wonderful universal form. But at the same time, after seeing that universal form, he's afraid that he has committed so many offenses to Krishna out of his unalloyed friendship. Thus, his mind is disturbed out of fear, although he had no reason to fear. Arjuna, therefore, is asking Krishna to show his Narayan form. That's the four-handed form. Because he can assume any form. This universal form is material and temporary. Remember that? Material and temporary. But it's a manifestation of the Lord's glories to impress people. As the material world is temporary. But in the Vaikuntha planets, he has his transcendental form with four hands as Narayan. There are innumerable planets in the spiritual sky, and each of them, Krishna is present by his primary manifestations of different names. Thus, Arjuna desired to see one of the forms manifest in the Vaikuntha planets. Of course, in each Vaikuntha planet, the form of Narayan is four-handed, but the four hands hold different arrangements of symbols, the conch shell, mace, lotus, and disc. According to the different hands, these four things are held in other words, sometimes the mace is held in the upper left hand, sometimes it's held in the lower right hand, whatever. The Narayans are variously named. All these forms are one with Krishna. Therefore, Arjuna requests to see his four-handed feature. And that reminds me of when Krishna was hiding from the gopis one time, and he was hiding by manifesting this particular form. He manifested two extra arms. And when the gopis saw these extra two arms, they didn't recognize it was Krishna, obviously. And they simply asked God, my dear God, Narayan, after offering obeisances, of course, where's Krishna? And Narayan didn't know. He didn't know. But anyway, and then Radharani came. And Narayan, that is Krishna, manifesting himself as Narayan, could not manifest the extra two arms anymore. They kept disappearing. and then appearing, disappearing and appearing. So she caught Krishna in the trick. And there's a very beautiful temple near Govardhan called the Chaturbhuj temple. Chaturbhuj, four. Chatur means four. Bhuj means hands or arms. Arms, actually. And very beautiful deity there. Ecstatic deity right near Govardhan. And anyone wants to go to Govardhan with us, we will take them to the Chaturbhuj temple, where they can see this beautiful form of Krishna as he was hiding out from Srimati Radharani and the gopis. And also, right at that temple, there's a Narayana lake, and there's a deity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where Lord Chaitanya resided, and he meditated on this particular pastime of Krishna manifesting forearms. And Prabhupada here says, all these forms are one with Krishna, therefore Arjuna requests to see his four-handed feature. Okay. Kiritinam garinam chakrahastam michami tvam drashtam aham tathaiva vinaiva rupena chaturbhujena sahasrabaho baba vishvamurte. Kiritinam with helmet, dinam with club, chakrahastam, disc in hand, ichami I wish, tvam you, drashtam to see, aham I, tata eva in that position, tena eva in that rupena form, chaturbhujena four-handed, Sahasrabaho, O thousand-handed one, Baba just become, Vishvamurte, O universal form. O universal form, O thousand-armed Lord, I wish to see you in your four-arm form with helmeted head and with club, wheel, conch, and lotus flower in your hands. I long to see you in that form. So it's the same thing that was described previously. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita, 5th chapter, text 39, it is stated, Ramadi Murtishu, the Lord is eternally situated in hundreds and thousands of forms, and the main forms are those like Rama, that's Lord Rama. Nrsimhadev, that's half man, half lion incarnation of Lord Narayan, the resting place of all living entities, etc. There are innumerable forms. Actually, there are as many forms, that's unlimited, as waves in the ocean. That's unlimited. Because waves keep coming. There's no limit to waves. But Arjuna knew that Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, assuming his temporary universal form. He is now asking to see the form of Narayana, a spiritual form. This verse establishes without any doubt the statement of the Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, and all other features originate from him. He is not different from his plenary expansions, and he is God in any of his innumerable forms. In all these forms, he is fresh like a young man, no old guys. That is a constant feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who knows Krishna becomes free at once from all contamination of the material world. Navayovanam cha. He is always youthful. And Prabhupada here is making reference to the Srimad Bhagavatam, which has a list of incarnations. And at the end of all these incarnations, let's say expansions, I like that word better. At the end of all these different expansions, it says, Ete Chanksa Kalakpumsa Krishnas tu Bhagavan Swayam. What does that mean? That all these expansions that of Krishna that were previously listed in this chapter of the Bhagavatam are all portions or portions of plenary portions of Krishna. Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of God. In other words, the same person, we mentioned this many times before, there's not many gods, there's only one God, Narayan and Krishna, absolutely the same person. But the same person in different moods, that's all. But the same person in different moods simultaneously, which is pretty hard or impossible for any of us to manifest, right? So Krishna, he can be playing his flute one place, in another place, he could be half man, half lion, ripping apart Hiranyakashipu. Another place, he could be killing Ravana, going to the forest with Sita Devi. Another place, simultaneously, he can be a tortoise that's supporting the Mandara hill. And another place, he could be on top of Mandara hill, acting as its pivot. In another place, he can be a fish And actually, Krishna has incarnations or manifestations in every species of life. And some expansions that are not even species, like half man, half lion is not a species that we know. That's not one of the 8,400,000 species. Krishna can actually combine species. Isn't it? He just combines them in different ways. Krishna can do anything he wants. He just has a good old time. He's having fun, as we mentioned before. That's God. And he's doing all these things in unlimited places, unlimited expansions, simultaneously. And he's the same person. Wow. If that's not impressive, I don't know what is impressive. Okay, on that happy note about Krishna, we will take some questions now. Let me stop the sharing. No more sharing. And allow you to, hold on a second. Allow you to ask some questions. Give me 1 second. Okay, who wants to ask a question? Everyone's shy tonight. Even Sumukha's shy, which is really remarkable. No one. Okay. Oh, Sadhvi. It's great devotee. Some of you don't know Sadhvi. She's actually been serving Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu practically for a whole life and just dedicated book distribution and supporting the devotees in a very humble way. Okay, you have a question, Sadhvi? Can't hear you. Can anyone hear her? I can't hear her. I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you. Do you have a microphone or something there? No. Probably your microphone on your computer is not working. So. You can type what you can do is type your question in while someone else is answering the question, asking a question, and then I'll read your typed question, okay? Yeah, why don't you type your question?
Good, if I can ask a question, if you need questions asked.
Yeah.
So
okay.
My question was in the beginning, you were speaking about, people going to Krishna and asking for material things. And at times Krishna provides that. And then we also see that sometimes we pray for something. And then what Krishna gives us is like teach us a lesson that we didn't really want that. But my question is, it seems that Krishna answers the prayers when they're, not so lofty, but when we really pray for pure devotional service, is it that he sees that we're saying we're praying for pure devotional service, but he sees that actually our heart is somewhere else, and so that way we're not obtaining?
That is actually a very good statement. Yes, many times Krishna sees what we mean, not what we say. I mean, that's like an expert psychologist. You actually don't, I mean, you hear the words, but you don't really hear what the words mean. You hear what they're actually in their heart, what's in their heart. So, for example, we may pray every morning with a prayer, Mama Janmani, Janmani Shre Bhavatad Bhakti Hoyitigi Twaye. That, my dear Lord, please give me pure devotional service life after life. And, we're reciting the Shikshashtaka every morning. But as we're reciting it, we're not thinking, we're thinking, I like it here, Krishna. So Krishna hears the intention. You understand? Just like I was trained in empathy, is to not so much hear the word. Let's say if someone is speaking in what we would say a very harsh way, you hear not so much what they're saying, but what they're asking for. You know, what their unmet need is. And then based on that, you respond. And Prabhupada was like that too. Prabhupada would respond to what a person needed to hear, not so much what a person asked him for. So that's one thing. Another thing is that we may ask for pure devotional service, and then Krishna will give it to us in an indirect way by giving us a hard time in the mature way. Yeah, that's another way to answer that question. To say, Krishna, I'd love to be a pure devotee. I said, okay, here we go. You know, because we think when we're asking for pure devotional service, that is okay. I got it. You know, let me wake up tomorrow morning and be a pure devotee. But it's not like that. Krishna will put us in a situation, where Krishna takes things away. So then all we're left with is this holy name. Actually, you know, that's the statement that Prabhupada was very fond of. But those who I especially favor, you know, I take away things so all they're left, you know, their family and friends, reject them. And then all they're left with is Krishna's holy name. Do you see where to type, Sadvi? Yeah, it's under the chat. All you got to do is hit chat, and you can send the message either to everyone or to me, and then I can answer it. So that's, if you hit chat at the bottom of the screen, you just hit that chat, then you'll see a chat window open up on the right-hand side of your screen. And you type in that chat window. Like right now, I'm typing a chat window a chat message to everybody that says, whoops, Hare Krishna. See the Hare Krishna? That's where the chat window, you just type down there. So anyway, that was a very good question, Krishna Priya. That Krishna sees, and the answer is twofold. Krishna sees what we're actually asking for. You know, like sometimes people say, Nadanam, Najanam, Nasundarim, Kavitam va Jagadish Kamaye, Mama Janmani, Janmani Sre Bhavatad Bhakti Hoitiki Twaye. That's a verse from the Shikshashika. I don't want wealth. I don't want followers. I don't want handsome men. You know, we have to put this in a non-sexist way. Because it's kind of funny. Like in the morning, sometimes people are reciting this verse, and I hear the ladies say this. I hear the ladies say, I'm not interested in wealth or followers or in beautiful women. I'm thinking, oh my God. So it doesn't, I really think that people should recite the prayer in such a way that it makes sense to them. I mean, yeah, if they're interested in other women, then they should. I see your question now. So if they're interested in other women, then it's honest. But anyway, this is. I mean, I almost fall over laughing when I hear people when women recite that in the morning, isn't it? Like Krishna Priya is out there in the morning. She says, "I'm not interested in beautiful women." I said, "Hope not."
That's in half an hour after the newsroom here on the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
What's that? Anyway, so we often say prayers without meaning them, and we say them like little parrots. We should actually mean them when we say them and translate them into something that's meaningful to us. Don't say you're not interested in beautiful women, because you're not. Anyway, so of course, Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada translates that verse as sometimes Kavita Sundari, is like poetic verses, beautiful poetic verses, mundane poetry. So Prabhupada sometimes translates it like that. So that it's a little different translation, but really, really don't, because someone from the outside, someone comes in and finds all the ladies saying they're not interested in beautiful women, they're just going to think that, that we're really on the cutting edge here in Krishna consciousness. So rephrase the prayers so they actually have some meaning to you. That's the point I'm making. Sometimes it just shocks me how devotees say the same prayers every day and they don't, instead of paraphrase, it's actually better to paraphrase a prayer rather than to repeat it verbatim. That's why I have issues with people when they learn verses. And if they can't repeat a verse verbatim, they lose their mark on the Bhakti Shastri test. I have issues like that. It shouldn't be. It should be, we should ask people to paraphrase a verse because then they understand it. Paraphrase it and turn it around. Tell me the second part of the verse before the first part of the verse. That's actually a good thing, Okay, let's see if you actually understand the verse. Janma karma chame divyameva myoviti tatvata chatva deham punajanma iti mameti sojana. So turn that around. Turn around. One who leaves his body, doesn't take birth again in this material world, and that's when you are able to understand that Krishna's appearance and activities are transcendental. So that shows I've actually understood the verse. Okay, let me read Sadhvi's question now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Interesting answer. With Krishna being non-different from his picture, what to do with a child's book about Krishna that has a good cover? When I opened it, the stories are not accurate and even nasty. Ooh. I would recycle the book, but there are many pictures of Krishna. What to do with the book? With this book that was written by a friend of Shishupal. Oh my God. Shishupal. Shishupal book. Yeah, I would put in, like we used to say, sacred throwaway. It's not practical to burn it. That's what some people would do, or bury it, but you should have some, in the temple, we always used to have this sacred throwaway bin. I don't know if any of you remember this from the early days, where there was any sacred thing, like pictures, because Krishna's present in his picture, Krishna's present in his holy name, Krishna's present in his paraphernalia. So we would, if we had to just throw it away because the picture was ripped, we would actually put it in sacred throwaway. Not so it would go in a dump with everything else. So it should be treated with respect. What kind of guy? Shishupal. Is actually signed Shishupal on it? Friend of Shishupal, sorry. That's interesting. I would say, put in the sacred throwaway, or if you want to keep the, take the cover off, it's nice, and frame it or something, like put it in a sacred place. Yeah, that reminds me of another point that I notice sometimes when people give class, they may have the tendency to put the book down on the asana next to them. Don't ever put the book, any spiritual book, on a place where you've sat or a place where you've stood. It should be at least on the table. Keep it on your lap. I think that's all right. Some people use this little stand. But the book should be treated as like the deity. Sometimes I put the deity on my lap when I'm painting Krishna in the morning. I'm doing my deity worship. But the books have to be treated just like deities. Just like deities. And the picture of Krishna, the picture of the spiritual master, should be treated just like a deity. It's not that you put anything on top of the picture or anything that's not sacred on top of the picture. It's actually an extremely important point about pictures, sacred objects. Very, very careful about them. Other thing is, if it's a book about nonsense, then you can just throw it on the floor. But if it's a book about Krishna, anything related with Krishna, your beads, that's why we keep the beads in a bead bag. The beads Don't touch the floor. I think that makes sense. Yeah, another thing about sacred things. Yeah, here's another point I was going to make about pictures. I mean, sometimes devotees, they have pictures of Krishna on their shirts or something like that. I don't recommend it, because then you go into the toilet and you bring Krishna in the bathroom with you. You know, so I mean, it's enough to wear your neck beads, and you can't take your neck beads off every time you go into a contaminated place. But you shouldn't have any pictures of Krishna. Or even if you say, well, I take my shirt off before I go into the toilet, but still you're putting your shirt in the same laundry with all your socks and everything like that. So the picture of Krishna is actually turning in the laundry and touching your socks. So these are sacred objects. Krishna and Guru are present in the pictures. Let me see if I can find a picture. Yeah, here, like for example, here's Nectar of Devotion. And Krishna is present there. This is Krishna. You know, we touch the book to our head. It's a manifestation, an incarnation of Krishna. Like that. We're not like the president of the United States who went to a church and turned a Bible upside down and thought he was being religious and abused people on the way to do that. Anyway, I'm not supposed to speak politically. So anyway, be careful. So one more question. That was a good question, Sadhvi. I appreciated that question.
Krishna Maharaj,
Haribol.
is it okay if I have an off-topic question?
Yes, ask it. Ayush is our child protege here. He's an avatar, the Ayush avatar.
Maharaj, it's you are the representative of Prabhupada, so.
Well, probably a Shishupal I'm representing. All right, so Ayush, what's the question?
So your class is very self-explanatory, but I had this question that in the first canto, chapter 7th verse, it says, Yasyam vai shruyamanayam Krishne paramapurushe bhaktir upadyate pumsa shloka moha bhayapaha. So the translation is, simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. So my question is that every time we hear that the Mahamantra destroys, we always hear Mahamantra destroys anarthas, all the anarthas. But this time it says the fire of lamentation, illusion, or fearfulness. And the holy name, it's the expansion of Krishna. And how do we understand?
The holy name is directly Krishna.
That's directly Krishna. So how do we understand, like it says lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. It doesn't say all anarthas, or it doesn't say lust, anger, or greed. It specifically says these three. Could you elaborate more?
Well, it does all those things and more. Just because it doesn't mention the other things doesn't mean it doesn't do more things. You know, the holy name is perfect and complete. What is that? Namachintamani, you know this verse? Namachintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigra Purnashuddha Nityamukto Hinatwam Namanamino. That the name of Krishna is Chintamani. It's a spiritual gem. Krishna's Chaitanya Vigraha. It is the life, and it's the form of all the living entities, or Krishna, Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, Purna. It is complete. It has everything. So just because that verse just mentions a few things, doesn't mean it negates the other things, or it doesn't. The other things aren't true. Purna, it's complete. Shuddha, it is pure. Nityamukto, it is eternally liberated. Avinatvam namanamino, and it is non-different from Krishna. So that's a very important verse. I think you know that verse, right?
I've heard of it a lot, but I will memorize it.
Now you should memorize it. Namachintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purnashuddha Nityamukto Vinatvam Namanamino. And very, very important.
Maharaj?
What?
Where is it from, Maharaj?
Who remembers this exact citation of that? Anybody here? Champaka, you remember the exact citation of that verse? Give me 1 second. I will tell you. due to my faithful computer, I will actually tell you the exact citation of the verse. I believe it is from one of the Puranas. All right, let's say, 1 second. Nama Chintamani. I think it's from the Harinam Chintamani. Give me 1 second.
That's what I was also thinking.
It says Padma Puran, Maharaj,
Yeah, that's what I thought, Padma Puran.
but it's quoted
Here it
in the
is.
Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yes, it's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, quoted, yes. Maja 17:133. It's a quotation from the Padma Puran. Yes, from the Padma Puran. Thank you. You see it right here. So, it's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita if you want to see the Sanskrit for it. Chaitanya Charitamrita, 17:133, Madhya 17:133. Okay? So, yes, that's the holy name. It's everything. Thank you. Was that Anshu who answered that question?
Oh, yes, Prabhu, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Wow. Anshu's a great devotee. He's going to be taking initiation very soon.
Thank you, Maharaj. Just humble obeisances to you.
He's in Sydney.
That's right.
One-
Yes.
One day when we don't have the lockdown anymore, then I will be able to visit.
Most welcome, Maharaj.
Thank you. It's good to see you. So, okay, I think we got it. And now,
Hare Krishna,
good to
Gurudev.
see everybody. Okay. Thank
Hare
you very
Krishna.
much for joining. What's that?
I have a question, Gurudev.
Oh, Sumuk. Okay, what's the question? You get one question today.
Okay, one question. When we say we should ask for pure devotional service from Krishna, instead of asking from Krishna, why can't we just do pure devotional service under the guidance of spiritual master?
Well, we have to ask for the purity to have the mental and spiritual purity to perform pure devotional service. Of course, by serving the spiritual master is transforming our offering to pure devotional service. But we should want to have the mentality of serving in pure devotion. What is that mentality? And yabi lashita shunyam jnana karma navartam anukulyena krishnanushilanam. That's from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. That to being devoid of any other motivation, both subtle and gross. We should want that mentality. So that's what we pray for. Not only that we're doing pure devotional service because we have the mercy of a pure devotee who is accepting our offering, but we have the mentality of pure devotional service, because the three qualities of pure devotional service are: number one, to do what Krishna wants; number two, to do it with a spirit of devotion; and three, to be active at it. So that's actually pure devotional service right there. Not only to do what Krishna wants, but to do it with the spirit of pleasing Krishna. That'd be second. Okay, on that happy note, see Jagat, see Jagat, you see how my camera goes like this? I'm a better programmer than you.
Gurudev, there's actually a follow-up question from Mother Duka Huntry on your live Facebook.
Okay.
She
Ask
says, I have a question along the lines of bringing sacred photos and paraphernalia into unclean places. Would this include our cell phones, and what guidelines should we follow in this regard?
Would this include the what? What did you have?
Would this include our cell phones? Would they be considered sacred paraphernalia? I assume because we all have lots of pictures.
That's actually quite interesting. There was a study done by some doctors that the cell phone is actually dirtier than the stool room because of everything it comes in contact with. I mean, it's an interesting question that I've actually thought of too. because the cell phone has pictures of Krishna on it, right? Or in it. And also my little Kindle device, also, does it also include my computer? You know, so these are interesting questions that I mulled over. But sometimes we have to be practical. I mean, we can't take our neck beads off or our Brahmin thread off when we go into a sacred place, or take our tilak off, or take Krishna out of our hearts when we go into the bathroom. Krishna, would you mind stepping out of my heart while I go into the toilet, please? So I think there's a limit. We should be practical. I mean, I carry my cell phone with me everywhere, even when I go swimming. It's waterproof. So anyway, I would say be practical. That's my answer to that question. And because if we get too fanatic, then I'd have to just like wash my cell phone out every day, or I wouldn't be able to bring it into the deity room or whatever. It's just. It's hard to say. I mean, like all of us are wearing these masks nowadays, and these masks are extremely moochy too. Clean your mask regularly. My only answer to, what's that?
Sorry. No. Go ahead. Sorry.
My only answer is to be practical.
Okay. Can I ask another follow-up question?
All right.
About the Shikshastika prayer, nor do I desire beautiful women.
Yeah.
I'm just asking if you would say my understanding is all right. In other words, could I keep saying it the way it is? The way that I understand it for myself is I don't desire to be a beautiful woman, and I don't desire to be the envy of other beautiful women, to be competitive with other beautiful women.
That's a nice way to look at it. But if you were a gopi, I would say I desire to be a beautiful woman to please Krishna. So I wouldn't say, because if I say I don't desire to be a beautiful woman, one day you may wake up, you know, like looking like what is that person? Like the Phantom of the Opera or something like that.
Right. Well, I guess it's about the mentality, you know. That...
I don't. I would say, you know, what would I say? I don't know what I would say. I would say, you know, I don't desire to enjoy the opposite sex or something like that, or you know what? I would paraphrase it. You know, to enjoy, you know, to exploit people. Let me put him on mute. Let me say, I don't desire, you know, it's not that someone doesn't desire to get married. It's fine, because we mentioned that one devotee was praying to get married for a nice wife and everything like that. But I really don't desire to have an exploitative relationship with other people based on the body. That's one way I would say it.
Right. Well, for the women psychology, women in general actually want to be beautiful more to be competitive with other women than to attract men. Obviously, the attracting men is there and it's very powerful, but they're a lot more likely to look at the other woman than to look at the men.
So they're competitive.
Bigger than her. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that information. Now I learned something new today.
Yeah, I don't think you would relate to that, but I have a woman's psychology and body because I'm still a fallen soul. So I understand.
Yeah, I remember my mother, when there was any program, she wanted to have the best outfit that she would spend thousands of dollars on. And if anyone else had the same outfit at that program, she would have a heart attack. So you're right. Now,
and so, yeah, she's concerned about all the other beautiful women more than the men.
Yeah.
The men are so interesting, actually. The women being beautiful.
So I guess as in a lady's body, you just have to figure out an appropriate prayer to make in that regard. Because it's not part of my psychology in this particular body. Anyway, I just don't want, I want to just be a servant of a servant of a servant of a servant of the Lord. Thank you for the questions. This is an interesting point that I've never really thought about too much before. You've actually educated me in women's psychology today. Thank you for that. I think we should end class now on this happy note. Okay, all glories to His divine grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada.